Pardon procedure. Problems over Poland. The president's message of horror. President Andrzej Duda expressed his wish that Prosecutor General Adam Bodnar would take action to suspend the execution of the sentence and release Mariusz Kaminski and Maciej Wasik before the pardon procedure was completed. Adam Bodnar confirmed the commencement of such proceedings, but did not intend to take further steps and limited himself to submitting an application for court documents related to the case of sentencing both politicians. The Minister of Justice, who is also the Prosecutor General, did not reveal the date of issuing the opinion necessary to continue the pardon process, but agreed to the request of the presidential palace to omit court opinions, which was supposed to speed up the proceedings. He noted that the president could have chosen a simpler path by deciding to use the power of pardon on his own. Bodnar drew attention to Article 568 of the Code of Criminal Procedure, which allows the suspension of the execution of a sentence or a break in its execution due to particularly important reasons, such as the short time remaining to serve the sentence. The minister announced an analysis of whether such reasons exist. He noted that Kaminski and Wasik had only just started serving their sentences, and the president cited their hunger protest as the reason for pardoning them. The minister emphasized that this should not be the only argument for terminating the sentence. On Thursday, it was reported that Adam Bodnar would not release Kaminski or Wasik in the near future. The Ministry of Justice decided not to take hasty actions in this matter. Andrzej Duda, expressing hope for Bodnar's quick reaction, emphasized the importance of this decision for Poland's interests. President Andrzej Duda wanted the Prosecutor General to suspend the execution of the sentence and release the convicts before the pardon process was completed. Mariusz Kaminski and Maciej Wasik were transferred from the remand center in Warsaw-Grochow. Kaminski was sent to the prison in Przytuły Ster and Wasik to the prison in Radom. The reason for the transfer was the safety of the units in which they stayed. The Finnish border guard detained 11 Iranian citizens after they illegally crossed the eastern border with Russia, Finnish media YL reported on January 12th. Finland decided to completely close its border with Russia at the end of November in order to limit the inflow of migrants from that country. In November, Finland saw the arrival of approximately 900 asylum seekers from various countries, including Kenya, Somalia, and Yemen, who arrived from Russia. Helsinki accused Moscow of organizing this move in response to Finland joining NATO. The Finnish authorities announced on January 11th that the border closure would be extended at least until February 11th. The border guard detained 11 Iranians in Lappeenranta, a city on the Finnish-Russian border about 49 kilometers from Vyborg, Russia. After being detained, the migrants submitted asylum applications. Heikki Atiainen, commander of the border guard in southeastern Finland, told YLE that initial investigations revealed Russian support for the men, but their identities remained unknown. Atiainen did not confirm Russian authorities' involvement in helping migrants cross the border, but added that Russian border guards are cooperating with the investigation. Finnish authorities have previously accused Russia of using asylum seekers at the border as a tool in a hybrid operation against Finland. This tactic of Russia is similar to the strategy of Belarus, which since 2021 facilitated the inflow of migrants from third countries to the Baltic countries and Poland. Finland has taken steps to learn lessons from Poland's experience in border security and issues related to the arming of migrants. On Wednesday and Thursday, significant GPS signal disruptions were observed over Poland. The greatest difficulties occurred on January 10th when the failure covered the entire northern part of the country and a large area of the Baltic Sea. This situation resembled similar events at the end of the previous year. Websites monitoring technological systems once again raised alarms about problems with the GPS system in Poland. This time, many areas of the northern part of the country and a significant part of the Baltic Sea were affected. Cyberdefense24 published a graphic on its X page that showed the extent of the disruption on both January 10th and 11th. The causes of these disruptions remained unknown, and the National Air Navigation Services Agency did not issue an official position on the matter. GPS signal interference was also noticeable in late December. On December 27th, the northwestern and eastern parts of Poland were most affected. Confirmation of these problems also came from the National Air Navigation Services Agency. The problem was not limited to Poland. Similar difficulties also occurred in other countries neighboring Ukraine. PANSA spokesman Tomasz Modrzejewski, in an interview with Wirtualna Polska, noted that the causes of the disruptions are not investigated by the Polish agency because the GPS system is administered by the United States Department of Defense. The National Air Navigation Agency warned pilots about the problems by issuing a special NOTAM warning note. PANSA also informed about ongoing activities aimed at determining the causes of the failure. The president of Germany, Frank-Walter Steinmeier, in his message expressed understanding for the feelings of people who want to escape from difficult reality, referring to the war of Russian aggression against Ukraine. Steinmeier emphasized the longing for a peaceful world, at the same time pointing to the need to constantly work for peace. The president warned against turning away from democracy, emphasizing that German citizens can expect Democrats to cooperate for the common good. He also noted that in difficult situations for democracy, courage, and cooperation, as well as taking into account the interests of all people, are better advisors than anger and contempt. Steinmeier pointed out that the world this year showed its dark side, including suffering and destruction, hatred, and violence. He mentioned the Russian war against Ukraine and the actions of Hamas and the victims of the conflict in the Middle East. The German president said that this year has left many questions unanswered and concerns about the future are visible in society. The Russian manufacturer of Orlan drones and other military products is circumventing sanctions by obtaining foreign components and increasing production. This information was provided by the Ukrainian volunteer group Inform Napalm based on the company's data leaked by hackers on January 12th. The Special Technology Center (STC) in St. Petersburg, in addition to the Orlan 10 drones used by Russian forces for reconnaissance and artillery fire control, also produces electronic warfare systems and other equipment for the Russian army. Inform Napalm's analysis based on data provided to the international intelligence community by the Ukrainian hacker group Cyber Resistance the previous November showed the STC's dependence on foreign components. For example, the transport hexacopter uses a Chinese engine from T-Motor, a flight controller and GPS module from Radiolink Electronic Limited, a Lenovo laptop, and a Sony camera. STC also imports parts and equipment from the US, Germany, Spain, Austria, the UK, and Switzerland, despite broad Western sanctions aimed at preventing Russia from obtaining high-tech, dual-use goods. Procurement documents reveal that STC uses a simple scheme to access these products. Dummy companies based in China, Serbia, the United Arab Emirates, or Turkey purchase products from suppliers, which are then purchased by a Russian supplier and shipped to STC's facilities. Inform Napalm reports that STC maintains stable cooperation with Chinese companies in the supply of electronic components. China, without providing direct military assistance to Russia, supplies Moscow with large amounts of dual-use goods, supporting the country in its fight against Western sanctions. Ukraine's military intelligence agency HUR revealed that it had seized 100 gigabytes of classified data from the STC without revealing details of the operation. The National Agency for the Prevention of Corruption, NAACK, has identified approximately 2,500 foreign components in Russian weapons, mostly from American manufacturers that do not sell their products directly to Russia. On January 12th, the Council of Europe expressed regret at Russia's withdrawal from the Convention for the Protection of National Minorities adopted by this organization. Moscow's denunciation of the convention, which took place in October last year, was perceived as a reaction to the limitation of the powers of the Russian representation. The Council of Europe expressed concerns about the effects of this decision on national minorities and indigenous peoples in the Russian Federation. In its statement, the Advisory Committee of the Framework Convention for the Protection of National Minorities, FCNM, stressed that Russia's withdrawal deprives more than 25 million people belonging to various national minorities in Russia of the protection provided for by this international treaty. The committee also drew attention to the overrepresentation of young men from national minorities in the Russian army and their high losses during the conflict with Ukraine. The statement also noted that national minorities in Russia face restrictions on their linguistic and educational rights and experience serious human rights violations, especially against minority rights defenders. The Commission also expressed concern about the situation of national minorities in Ukraine, especially in Crimea and other territories occupied by Russia. Since 2014, the Crimean Tatar community and other Ukrainians in these areas have been exposed to repression by Russia, including forced acceptance of Russian passports and forced military service. The statement emphasizes that, in addition to the human suffering and destruction of cultural heritage caused by Russian aggression, national minorities are also exposed to human rights violations and assimilation policies pursued by the occupying forces. The FCNM, ratified by approximately 40 countries, aims to promote the rights of national minorities, combat discrimination, and protect ethnic groups and cultures. Russia ratified this treaty in 1998. The Australian Federation of Ukrainian Organizations, AFUO, appealed on January 12th to the Australian government to deliver 45 decommissioned Taiwan helicopters to Ukraine instead of scrapping them. In December, information appeared in the media that the Australian Army planned to dismantle and bury its fleet of multi-role Taiwan helicopters, despite Kiev's official request to transfer them to Ukraine. According to a statement by the Ukrainian Diaspora Organization in Australia, these helicopters may significantly affect the situation in Ukraine. AFUO noted that the number of Taiwan helicopters more than doubles the number of helicopters Ukraine has received since the beginning of the conflict with Russia. However, data from the open source group Oryx shows that Ukraine has received at least 68 attack, transport, and utility helicopters from its partners, and 17 countries have promised further deliveries. AFUO also claims that transferring the helicopters to Ukraine will be cheaper than destroying them. The organization announced that it would gather the Ukrainian community in Sydney on January 14th at 2 p.m. to call on the government of Anthony Albanese to change its decision. Further rallies are also planned in other cities. The Australian government's plans to dismantle helicopters have sparked public outrage. Australian Defence Minister Richard Marles said the helicopters would be disposed of in a way that maximizes their value, although he did not provide details. The Asia-Pacific Defense Reporter reported that the helicopters, decommissioned at the end of 2023, were in excellent condition and suitable for a variety of missions, including military transport, search and rescue, medical evacuation, and special operations. The withdrawal of Taiwan helicopters from service in favor of the Black Hawks was decided due to maintenance issues. The entire Taiwan fleet was grounded after a disaster during a training exercise that killed 4 maintenance personnel. Since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine began, Australia has provided aid to Ukraine worth 910 million Australian dollars, nearly 610 million US dollars, including 490 million dollars in military aid. On Friday, hundreds of thousands of people took part in the last pre-election rallies in Taiwan ahead of important presidential and parliamentary elections. China's defense ministry warned at the time that it would destroy any Taiwanese independence plots. Taiwan, claimed by China as its own, has been a democratic state since the first direct presidential elections in 1999, which was the culmination of the struggle against authoritarian rule and martial law. The ruling Democratic Progressive Party, DPP, which supports Taiwan's independent identity and rejects HIN territorial claims, is seeking a third term with candidate Lai Ching-te, the current vice president. China, which has never renounced the use of force to take control of Taiwan, described the elections as a choice between peace or war, calling the DPP dangerous separatists. The DPP rejects China's demands for sovereignty, arguing that only the people of Taiwan can decide their future. Lai, speaking at the rally, stressed that the world was watching Taiwan's vote. Vasyl Povoroznuk, Metropolitan of the Lugansk Diocese of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate, was accused by the Security Service of Ukraine, SBU, as reported on January 12th, of collaborating with the Russian occupation authorities in Luhansk. For a long time in Ukraine, representatives of the Moscow Patriarchate have been suspected of supporting Kremlin propaganda during the armed conflict, and some lower-ranking clergy have been convicted of directly helping Russian troops. The SBU brought in absentia charges against Povoroznuk based on an article of the Criminal Code relating to helping an aggressor state. The Metropolitan has previously had conflicts with the law in Ukraine. According to the investigation, Povoroznuk took part in a September ceremony in Moscow in 2022, where Russian dictator Vladimir Putin announced the annexation of parts of Ukraine, including the Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporozhian oblasts. The bishop allegedly supported Russia's military activities and its policy of annexation. Russia partially controls only these 4 oblasts and has full control over the capitals of only 2 of them. Donetsk and Luhansk have been under Russian occupation since the first invasion of Donbas in 2014. In May of the same year, the Metropolitan attended a meeting with Leonid Pasichnik, the head of the Illegal Occupation Administration in Luhansk, established by Moscow. According to the SBU, Povoroznuk appeared in the Russian media together with an advisor to Ramzan Kadyrov, the Chechen leader, promoting false information about Ukrainian soldiers and the situation on the front. In many interviews with Russian state media, Povoroznuk glorified the occupiers and called for the continuation of the war with Ukraine. The Metropolitan is currently staying in the territories of Ukraine occupied by Russia, and the SBU has announced that it will take action to bring him to court. There are 2 main Orthodox churches in Ukraine: the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate and the Autocephalous Orthodox Church of Ukraine. The Prosecutor General's office announced that a senior lieutenant of a Russian tank brigade who shot 2 civilians near the village of Maria in the Kiev region in 2022 was sentenced in absentia to life imprisonment. Ukrainian investigators are constantly working to identify and prosecute Russian soldiers responsible for war crimes, regardless of whether they are physically present on Ukrainian territory. The Russian lieutenant was found guilty of violating the laws and customs of war and intentional murder. The investigation showed that in March 2022, 5 Russian soldiers driving a car with the letter V, the symbol of Russian war forces, and the inscription RUS Tank Special Forces, arrived at the Enterprise located about 10 kilometers west of Kiev. 2 unarmed civilians, the owner and the guard of the company, approached the soldiers. Initially, they were released, and the soldiers assured that they did not pose a threat to them. However, when the civilians moved away a few meters, the convict and another unidentified Russian soldier opened fire with automatic weapons in their backs, which was proven by the prosecutor's office. The men died from at least 12 gunshot wounds. After the murder, Russian soldiers broke into the company premises and stole valuables. The crime was recorded by the company's surveillance cameras.